Welcome back to the Living Proof Recovery Podcast. We are your hosts, Brian and Evan. And tonight we are going to do a continuation of last week's episode. So this would be Grab Ass Part 2. I don't remember who left off, but do you want to pick first or do you want me to pick first?
Yep.
I'll
dive in the hat.
Hopefully we still have some good, there's still some meat on the bone for stuff for us to talk about. Randomness.
Spiritual toolkit.
Okay. So we hear about this a lot in meetings about, how important it is to pick up the tools, that are laid at our feet and to have this toolkit. Doesn't do us a lot of good, though, to have tools if we don't know how to use them, right? So, you give me a tool that I don't know how it's used, I'm going to misuse it every time, right? So what's in my toolkit? And I think this stuff's going to be pretty standard for most people, at least most of it, right? Like prayer is in my toolkit, meditation, the telephone, the program, service work, meetings are in the toolkit, just talking with another alcoholic and God. That's kind of the main, so the spiritual toolkit for me is steps 10, 11, and 12. Because that's how I stay in the solution on a daily basis and I grow in it. So whenever something tends to happen or crop up, I normally need to do a 10th and 11th step on it. And usually the answer is in there somewhere. There's a defect cropping up. There's something that I need to look at, that I need to be aware of, that I need to take to somebody else, things like that. But sometimes pride will get in the way and, I'll have this justified, I want to throw a pity party for a little while. And I did it just the other day, And my wife came at me with some recovery talk and didn't even know it was recovery talk. She was like, "Can we control any of this?" And I was like, "No." She was like, "Well, then stop focusing on the negative. Let's just move on." And I was like, "Okay." Yeah. And I was just like, "Yeah, you're right." And I was just like, I just wanted to have 5 minutes of fuck, And then it was like, okay, that's enough. Time to move the fuck on. So we have to have these tools, but we have to know how to use them. If we don't know how to use them, they're useless.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like I would be saying the exact same thing that you just said.
Yeah, there's not a lot to talk. Who came up with these?
But, in the beginning, sometimes that's hard. You don't, especially when you don't have these yet and you don't know what to do with them. Maybe you don't know what to do in certain situations, you know what I mean? So the easiest one to start with would be just call your sponsor at first if you need, and they can guide you, on how to use these tools and, the benefits of them, so.
Right. Think about it, you get on a job site and we need you to use this tool and you don't know how to use it. You don't just pick it up and just start trying to figure out how to use it. You ask them, well, how do I use it? That's the same way how we use our sponsor. And after a while, it becomes a working knowledge of, through practice of how you do this.
Yeah.
Right. So that one's there's not a whole lot to discuss really. I don't think, but there probably is, but we just didn't come up with it. Emotional sobriety.
All right. So, that was, especially early on this time around when I got sober, the emotional sobriety, I really, for me, I learned a lot about that through Refuge, right? And that was huge for me because I used to just fly off the handle so fast, and it didn't matter whether it was if it was anger or sadness, the emotions, it was just a fucking roller coaster all the time, right? And, it was huge for me this go around to learn how to deal with emotions and just be present and understand them. And, you know, that played into the whole impermanence thing. That was huge for me in early sobriety, to just be able to learn that it's okay to not be okay. Mm-hmm. You know, and I don't have to go into this frantic spazzing out moments.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have to react that way.
Or you don't have to pretend like you're okay.
Right. It's okay to not be okay. But learning how to just accept things for the way they are in that exact moment. You know, that was something that I really had to practice. Took a lot of patience and practice is really what it did for me. So,
yeah, I think it is okay not to be okay, but it's not okay to stay there.
Right.
You know, and it's kind of the difference. So this is about so much more like sobriety, like the physical sobriety. That's, to me, that's the easier part than the emotional sobriety, right? Because we have feelings, emotions, thoughts, character defects, you know, things that lead us into negative emotions, right? Like my self-will, you know, leads me into fear. It leads me into resentment. It leads me into guilt, shame, all these defects of character, insecurity, selfishness, dishonesty. It leads to all those things. And then what happens is I become emotionally unsober, right? Because I'm trying to control things that I can't control, or I'm trying to say it's a fear, right? And I'm trying to control this fear. I try harder and harder and harder. And what happens is the very thing I'm afraid of ends up happening because I'm running on emotions. And like say, I don't want to push somebody away, so I try harder and harder and harder to like basically stalk this person, you know, like always in their pocket, like, no, you can't leave me, don't leave me. And then what happens is I push them away, and the thing I feared the most, I just made it happen, right? So nothing good comes in my life from making decisions based on emotions. Like they always suck. Like it's always just some impulsive thing that ends up causing harm to me or others. And I need to keep a balance of my emotions. You know, like there's going to be highs, there's going to be lows, but like you said, it's not all the way up here and it's not all the way down here. It's more just kind of a slow and steady current.
Trying to find that even keel and and stay there, you know.
Yeah.
And that's what I was talking about with, like, you know, learning about impermanence and just being in the moment, you know what I mean? And I've even mentioned it before on here. There's been times where like my wife, for example, would be like, why are you so calm? How are you so calm in this? And it's because it took practice for me to learn how to not run on just straight emotion all the time, you know, because, you know, when we act immediately on just emotion, you know, like our feelings and stuff are going to change even about those situations. You know, if we can just give it a minute and fully try to understand what's going on and why it's going on, you know what I mean? We can get to a resolution versus jumping off and acting on our first instinct. Because for me, that's typically never the right answer.
No.
You know, that's typically never the right answer.
If it's based in emotion, it's probably not.
Yeah.
You know,
like there was I won't go into the specific details, but there was something we were discussing that had happened yesterday to someone we know, and I know you weren't there last night, but he told us the story about what was going on, and my first thought was like anger, even, and it had nothing to do with me, but the thought of it, I was like, that's like, and I was asked, what would you do? And my first thought was
Smack a
violence.
hoe.
No, my first thought was my first thought was violence. That's what it was. And if this situation did happen to me personally, it would be really hard not to run to that immediately, but then I had to stop and even thought about it this morning on my way to work, and I was like, man, that's what I would have wanted to do, but like thinking that being able to sit through it and do the right thing, because then the outcome would have been terrible,
much worse
for everybody. You know what I mean? This person has a family and kids, and you know what I mean? It would have just, a whole shitstorm would have happened. So
there's a sense of freedom to not having to act on your thoughts, right? Because a thought is just a thought. Like, it doesn't, like, I might think, I'm going to choke this guy, but if I don't choke him, that was just a thought. Like, it doesn't, we still have bad thoughts, or unspiritual, unsober thoughts, at times, but if we don't act on them, it's just a thought, and if I can take that thought captive and kind of look at it to what it is, then I don't have to act on it. What's really going on here? Okay, I can actually, look at it, like you said, and just kind of examine it a little bit and go, okay, I need to take a minute. And that's part of our toolkit, right? Is pausing. Like, that's another thing that's in that toolkit, is being able to pause for just a second and be like, okay, I want to do this. Why do I want to do this? Right. Is this my will? Is this my response? Or is this how I should respond? And then it's like, yeah, I can't choke this guy, right? Or whatever it is, right? I probably shouldn't give this old lady the finger because of how she drives.
Right.
That's someone's grandmother. Probably shouldn't do that. So I don't. But I mean, emotional sobriety, like, that's the hard part, in my opinion. Is because we get sober for a while, and then it's like, oh, I have all these. The old thinking sometimes can come back, and that's like a good litmus test for us to kind of look at and see how we're doing. Is like, just take a tally throughout the day. How do I talk to myself? How do I talk about other people? How am I acting the way that I would if I had like a thing to write out of how I would like to act throughout the day, or am I following through with all that stuff? Or am I just going through the day telling myself I'm a piece of shit, that I'm not worthy of stuff? Am I not happy? Am I not whatever, right? Like, I need to, am I irritable? Like, I need to look at that kind of stuff, because that's the kind of stuff that leads me to being uncomfortable, that leads me to drinking. It's not usually, oh, I saw a beer commercial. It's, I'm doing bad emotionally, right? Because I don't want to feel that way. So, all right.
All right, next one. Comfort in sobriety, is it helpful?
Okay. I remember writing this one down because I think it's a double-edged sword, right? Like, comfort, it's good to be comfortable in your own skin, to feel comfortable in your own skin, but we don't want to get too comfortable, right? Like, I think sometimes what made me write this is I think sometimes, like, in meetings or when we're talking to newcomers, or if we are in a treatment center setting, we try to make things too comfortable for people. It's like, oh, I don't want to upset him, or I don't want to tell him the truth, or, I don't want to, he might leave, or he might not come back to the meeting if we tell him the truth, or, if we call him out, or something like that. And I think that we need to get to a point where we need to be uncomfortable. Like, because, if we want to grow, we can't just go through sobriety just being comfortable all the time, because there's no growth. There's no growth there. So sometimes we have to be comfortable. It's not, I don't think it's very loving to just keep someone comfortable all the time. You know, if we see something, I think we got to call a spade, you know, and call it out, you know. So I think being comfortable in your own skin is good, but I think just keeping someone comfortable all the time, I don't think that helps.
Right.
If you know, if that makes sense.
Yeah. You know, being comfortable. So this goes back to, for me, the say yes, right? Mm-hmm. And that was something that I clinged on to, and I have tried my best to live by that, because it really hit home with me. Because I always wanted to do things my way for so long, because I felt like I was going to be comfortable if I could just do it how I wanted to do it, because that's how it's always been. I'm going to do what I want to do when I want to do it. So I had to step away from that and get uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
And that's where just saying yes to doing. Are we going to do this work? Are you really going to put in the effort? Like in the beginning, like, yeah, I wanted to be sober. Did I want to sit down and tell somebody a bunch of shit that I've done through my life and admit all these terrible things?
No.
Like, no.
No one wants to do that.
I said I'm going to do this, so this is what it is, and I'm going to put it all out there and get uncomfortable and do it. And being uncomfortable, that's where we grow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's not like it stops, you know, once we've done a 5th step or we've done a 9th step. It's like, okay, I've made amends. I don't have to ever be uncomfortable again.
Right.
Like, that's ridiculous.
Putting ourselves in recovery, putting ourselves in uncomfortable situations, as far as when it comes to recovery.
Right.
I'm not going to go put myself in an uncomfortable situation at the dope house.
Right.
But as far as I have to get uncomfortable to really find out who I am. How can I respond to these situations that are uncomfortable? And if we just are constantly coddled,
yeah, I think that's what I was getting at.
We're never going to figure that out.
Yeah.
And then I guess maybe even looking at it like to now, to today, like I was always uncomfortable just being sober.
Yeah.
Because I lived in a state of intoxication for so long that being sober was uncomfortable in itself. And nowadays, it's the opposite. I am comfortable being sober.
Yeah.
And even, what was it, a couple days ago at work, I came to you. I'd went almost the whole day at work with no nicotine.
Yeah.
And then hit this vape, and it made me feel like a head rush. And I came in there to you, and I sat down, and I was like, I don't like this.
Yeah.
I was so uncomfortable, and it wasn't like a high, but the feeling of not having nicotine for that long, and then getting that, it was like a head, and I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I was very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And that was even a reminder. I was like, man, sobriety feels great. And I wasn't like under the influence, but it gave me that feeling, and it reminded me of like that foggy cloudiness is what I felt. You know what I mean? And I was so uncomfortable.
So this just hit me, right? That when you said that, you know, it tells us in the big book that we will recoil from it like a hot flame, right? You weren't high, but you had this feeling that you associated with being high.
Right.
And it disgusted you. What?
I gotta give my boy Maddie a shout out real quick. Gotta show it. Look at him. Cleans up nice, son.
Yeah.
Get out there, boy.
Yeah.
Get you some,
Go
Maddie.
get you some.
No,
Hell yeah. No, you're good. But I said, like, it says that we recoil from it as from a hot flame, right? And it's not just when you see it, it's like you feel a certain way. It's like, ooh, this reminds me of back then. I don't like that. That's not who I am anymore. And it's like, I don't want that. You know, like, that's recovery, man. Like, that's awesome. Like, it's not awesome that you had to feel that, right? But it's awesome that that takes place.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like romanticizing the past. It's not like, oh, I remember this feeling. You know, like I like this. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop vaping for half the day every day. So I, you know, like it's not like that. You know, so that's good. I forgot what we were even talking about. Oh,
Being
comfort.
comfortable.
Yeah, and you said something like we can't coddle people. Like we just. It's been my experience, and just from what I've heard from other people's experience, that if you baby an alcoholic, you'll bury him. You know.
And I'm not like when I sponsor other guys, like I'm not an asshole about it, but I'm not gonna coddle you through this because and if you're not okay with that, maybe I'm not the right sponsor for
Yeah.
you, and that's okay too. But I'm just gonna tell you the brutal truth of what it is.
Yeah. I mean,
know,
do you want help?
Yeah, if you want help, like I'm not gonna coddle you
Yeah.
and tell you everything's gonna be okay.
Right.
Because it can be okay,
Yeah.
but
But
it
it's-
doesn't mean it's going to.
Right. I'm not just going to co-sign whatever you're saying to keep you comfortable. Right. If you, it tells us in the book, you know, if you need to go drink some more and get some more pain, go get it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not here to stop you from drinking. If you want to go drink, go drink. You know, if you don't, I'm here.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm going to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
You know, I don't lie to drunks. It's just, you know, I just give them the truth.
Yeah.
And, you know, once we can accept that, and it's like, if something makes me uncomfortable, there's probably a reason why it makes me uncomfortable. It probably means that that's probably what I need to be doing. Right. I need to hear that. Or, you know, I'm putting myself out there. Like, if I want to grow, like, that's just what I got to do.
Yeah.
You know, but it comes to a point where I think that we kind of get comfort in the uncomfortable. Now, that's a good type of comfort, right? It's like the say yes thing, like you said. It's like, yeah, it might make me uncomfortable, but let's go. Like, I'm going to fucking do it. Like, so what? I don't care. Who cares how I feel? I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
You know, so. Got anything else?
No.
You
good.
comfortable?
Comfortable.
All right. Desperation.
Desperation. Yeah. I was desperate when I got sober this time. And I was willing to do, you know, whatever was suggested of me. Just like in the big book, I had to reach for this thing with the desperation of a drowning man.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I did. You know, I came out of treatment and I was just anything that I can do that's going to help me grow in some way. I was about it. I'm going to work the 12 steps and attend AA and work with my sponsor. I'm going to become a member of Refuge Recovery and have a mentor and work the program of Refuge. And then as soon as
I'm going to get
done with that-
ordained.
right. Went back through the 12 steps again. You know what I mean? And just constantly, yes, I'm going to volunteer my time in the treatment center to help other people. Like anything I could do because I was desperate. I wanted this thing and I didn't know how to get it. Like over the years, I've learned some things, but I'd never fully given in and just said, okay, I'm done now. My way doesn't work.
Yeah.
And that's what I had to face it with this time was the attitude of and I knew I was going to die.
Yeah.
Period. I knew that. I accepted that. And I'm not okay with that.
Yeah.
You know, so I was desperate when I came in this time. And like, thank God I was.
Yeah.
It finally
It's a gift.
took me, I'm now 38 years old. It took me until I was 34 to get to that point.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, it's a gift. You know, the gift of desperation. Like, because I wasn't going to get to this point, you know, of leveling my pride and sacrifice, all those things without being desperate. You know, I just wasn't going to do it. I might do it for a short period of time, but I wasn't going to come to myself and go to another person and admit things. Like, I wasn't going to just do that on my own. Like, I would never have done that. I had to be desperate. And like when you're drowning, you don't give a shit who's helping you, or you don't care the tone of their voice when they're helping you. You don't care if it's a man's hand pulling you out of the water, or you don't care about the color of the life preserver. Like, you don't care about any of that stuff. It's like, just help me. Like, I don't care how you do it, how you talk to me, how I feel. Like, just help.
I didn't waste any time finding someone to help me.
Right.
It was like, okay, you can help me. Let's do this.
Yeah. Like, and that's a good point, because if someone, because I had a sponsee ask me one time, and he had been sponsoring a guy, and he was like, how do you know if they're really ready? Or how do you know if they're desperate? I was like, watch their feet. I was like, if they're desperate, you'll have to beat them away with a stick, man. Like, if they're not, you're going to have to bug them about, do you have your book? When do you want to meet up? Like, if they're desperate, they're going to be reaching out to you. Like, hey, man, let's go. Like, when can we move on? Like, I'm ready, And without that, man, like, I'm not saying we can't get sober without that, but for the real alcoholic, the real addict, 9 times out of 10, there's got to be a level of desperation there to change, because otherwise you're not going to do the work. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And, so we're not going to do that. We're not going to take direction from somebody else. I haven't done it my whole life. Why would I start now? Yeah. If I'm not desperate, right? Because if there's just one little lurking notion that maybe I can figure this out on my own, then I'm going to try that. Yeah. So we have to be desperate. That's just my opinion. I think that we have to. Like, we have to go at it like that. Think about when you're desperate, right? Say you're desperate because you're dope sick. Is there anything that's going to get in your way of getting that next bag? No. Right. No, it's not going to be like, oh, well, I can't get that bag because my son has a baseball game, or I got to be at work. So, I can't, but when it comes to recovery, a lot of us do that. I can't meet up with you because, I've got this thing going on, or I've got that. And it's like, hold on. I thought you were desperate. It's like, we have to go at it that way, the recovery. It's the same as, I'll do anything when I'm desperate. Cat turd, I'll eat it. Yeah. Like, let's go. Like, I don't give a shit what it is. You can tell me, like, I'm going to eat this jar full of crickets. Okay, cool. Yeah. Like, I will do anything, and that's the point I got to, is like, we ask people, I know I do, and I'm almost positive you do, when you sponsor them, if they're willing to go to any lengths. And that's what that means. It's like, are you desperate? Are you done? Do you want to do this or not? If you do, then do it. It's not like, I want to do it today, but maybe not tomorrow. It's like, well, no, we're either in or we're out. We talked about that, I think, on the last episode of, there's no gray area to desperation. You're either desperate or you're not. Yeah. So do you want to do it? It's kind of what it comes down to. Have you hurt bad enough? And if you haven't, maybe you haven't. Maybe you need to hurt some more. It took me a lot of hurt too. I wasn't, the first time, or the first several times I tried to get sober, like, I wasn't desperate. I didn't think my life depended on God or someone else's help. I didn't really, I was just like, ain't gonna happen to me, man. I'll be all right. I'll figure this out eventually. One day I'll wake up and I'll have the answers, and they didn't come. Yeah. I had all the wrong, I had answers, but they were all the wrong answers. So,
yeah. Same for me.
Yeah.
All right. Now we're going with willingness.
Okay. So it talks about in, that's a good segue, right? So it talks about in the big book about, like, these things that are essential, like honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. Am I willing to level my pride? Am I willing to sacrifice some time? And like I said, the best way to tell if somebody's willing is just watch what they do.
Yeah.
You know, like I've gotten to the point where I don't really, it's not that I don't pay attention to what people say, but I don't put a lot of stock in it. I'm just like, okay, I want to see what you do. I'm not concerned about what you say you're going to do until you show me. It doesn't mean anything. You know, if you tell me, yeah, man, I'm going to read these chapters in the book that you want me to read, and I'm going to highlight, and okay, cool.
Yeah.
Like, and then we'll see if you do it. You know, are you willing to be uncomfortable? Are you willing to, we got to stop playing recovery, you know, or like we got to stop, you know, like some people play church, you know, they go to church once a week and they present this thing in church when they're in church that this is how they are, you know, and then they're a totally different person when they leave church, right? We got to be willing to be the same person that we are in the meeting, that we are at work, that we are at home, all those kind of things, right? This stuff, and we got to be willing to accept this as a lifestyle. That this isn't just, I do this until the steps are done, and then I just go about doing my own thing. I live my best life, and, you know, no, I'm sorry, but there's requirements in there, and I take those seriously. It's like, are you willing to help the next guy? You know, that's one thing that I started asking people when I sponsor them is that, okay, we're going to get you through these steps. You know, ask them, are you willing to go to any length? And then I explain to them what that looks like. Yeah. And I said, you know, are you a man of your word? You know, if you say you're going to meet me somewhere at a certain time, you're there. You know, you're prepared. Yeah. You have your book, you know, stuff like that. But I also tell them, you know, once we get through this, are you willing to do the same thing I'm doing for you for somebody else?
Yeah.
You know, and if the answer is no, I mean, you can find another sponsor. Yeah. Like, I'm not doing this. You know, I'm trying to help people get in the trenches with us so that we can go help some people, you know. Like, I understand, like, you may have a problem with, you know, your alcoholism, but if you're not willing to help the next person, at least with some kind of inkling of that, you know, I don't expect you to be like, yes, I can't wait to sponsor, like, but it's like, well, maybe, yeah, like, I can see that, like, then we can continue. But someone's just like, nah, man, I'm just here to get what I can get, and no.
Yeah, you know, and all the things that you've said here about being willing, you know, that was something that my old sponsor would ask me, and are you willing to do whatever it takes? And of course, I would always say yes. I'm always like, yeah, I'm ready, I'm willing.
I can't believe you're asking me that.
Yeah, but it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't until these last 4 years, man, and I had to be willing, like, to all the things you said, even to work the steps, to sacrifice time away from my family, to go to treatment, and then to be able to make time to meet my sponsor and my support group and do all these things, and then work with other men and sponsees. And, you know, being willing to really honestly work the steps, right? Because
willing to be wrong.
Right, yeah, that too. But, like, when it came to working these steps, I'll just say it, like, steps 4 through 9, I was like, this sucks.
Yeah.
You know, but I had to be willing to do that. Nobody wants to go out here and tell someone our deepest, darkest secrets.
I don't want to pay anybody back.
Yeah, and then to go make amends to tell people how we've harmed them and what can we do to make it right, and look at ourselves and all of our defects and all of, you know what I mean? That nobody wants to do that, but I was willing, because that's what I was told. This is what it takes. And we can't leave nothing behind.
Yeah, so willingness, like, the program can give you a lot of things, but it can't give you willingness, right? Like, that has to come from within.
Yeah,
like, we can't give that to you. Like, if anybody you sponsor, like, I can't make you be willing. Like, I can't. You know, like, that has to come from you. And that usually comes from desperation. You know, that's kind of, like I said, this was a good segue, but, you know, I have to be willing to be uncomfortable, right? And I'm not just going to be, if I haven't heard enough, I'm not just going to be like, yeah, I want to be uncomfortable. No. Like another thing, like I have to be willing to face fear today, right?
Yeah.
Like I have to be willing to do hard things I have to be willing to continue, to persevere. We talked about that in the last, like I have to be willing to take shots. I had to be willing to, grind some days. Like I've got to get up and grind. I have to, okay, it's a new day. I got to get up and grind today. Like, I got to grind every day. That's what I have to do. Not grind to stay sober, but I got to go to get what God's got for me. I got to go get it. It's not, things aren't just going to be given to me. What's it say? God will do for us what we can't do for ourselves, right? But that means there's things I can do for myself, and I got to be willing to go do them, regardless of how I feel, right? And that's what I was saying. Like you said earlier, like how we feel, we can't run on that. We can't use that as a barometer of like what I do today. I got to do. There's certain things I got to do whether I want to do them or not. And I made a commitment 5 years ago that I was going to do that. When I did a third step, I made a decision that I was going to continue to do this stuff and that I was going to make it a part of my life. And am I perfect at it? Fuck no. Right. But I'm willing whenever I fall short, I'm willing to look at it and I'm willing to try to improve on it.
Yeah.
So like I said, we got to admit when we're wrong. My wife, like I said, she called me out yesterday and I was like, I'm fucking wrong.
Yeah.
And I told her, I was like, you're right. That's not easy. I was like, you're right. I was like, I was driving to work and I was thinking about it. I was like, what would I say to somebody I was sponsoring? Exactly what she just told me. And I was just like, I called her and I was like, you know what? You're right. I was like, I needed my little 5-minute pity party and I'm done. I was like, you're right. I was like, I need to stop focusing on the negative, focus on what you can do. And what do you know? My day instantly got better. So and it all started just from willingness. I was willing to hear what she had to say.
Right.
I could have been like, you know what? You're not in recovery.
Yeah.
You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know me. But I was just like, the truth hit, and I was like, she's spot on. So it took some humility. I don't know, any of this stuff that we do takes willingness.
Yeah.
All of it. Doing this every week. We made a commitment that we do this every week. Now, don't get me wrong, there's times when certain life things come up, but we try to work around it.
Right.
Because we made a commitment to each other that we would do this. It's not that we don't enjoy doing it, but like life happens.
Yeah.
And we made a commitment that, hey, I'm going to be here at this time. We're going to meet at this time to do this. So that's what we do.
Yeah.
And we're willing to do it, even if, I'd rather be doing something else, which normally that's not the case. But, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
All right. What we got, y'all? Mental obsession. Ooh.
A mental obsession. So, I guess this is right, like thinking back to the book, right? And how it was broke down to me about the thought, the craving, the mental obsession, all of that, or it can start as a thought, right? And then I can quickly turn it into an obsession, right? And once I get to that point of the mental obsession, for me in the past, once I get to that point where, thoughts are always going to come, and that's okay. But if I let it turn, if I'm not treating this thing and I let it turn to the mental obsession, now I'm going to have a craving real soon, because that's when, I can't crave it unless I put it in me. But that mental obsession, that's where my relapse, it was over.
Yeah.
And I was back off and running. And that's why it's so important to jump right into this thing in early recovery, because we can learn, like we said earlier, the tools and have a toolkit to where we don't allow those thoughts to turn to the mental obsession. Because that's, for me, it's game over. If I get to mental obsession, now it's on, and
beyond human aid.
This is what I'm doing. No matter what.
Yeah.
All bets are off now.
Yeah, because an obsession is a thought that overrides all other thoughts.
Right.
You know, so it doesn't matter. My willpower will be insufficient if I'm obsessing.
Yeah.
You know, like it's going to override my willpower. Right. And it tells us that in the book. It says that. So I like to use the analogy of, so it talks about in there about these strange mental blank spots that we have, right? Because it says, what's it say? Basically that at certain times, our willpower is insufficient. That doesn't mean every time, right? So at certain times, sometimes, occasionally. That's why it's so insidious and it's so dangerous, because we play these mental gymnastics where it's like, I'm just going to think through it, think through the drink.
Yep.
And on Tuesday, I might be able to think through it. Wednesday, I might be able to think through it. But then Thursday, I have that strange mental blank spot where I can't think through it, right? And then I'm drunk, right? So these mental blank spots, it's like, I like to use the analogy of like a roulette wheel, right? So you got a roulette wheel and you have all these numbers on it, and we'll pick a number, say 00, right? Say it's missing the 00. Now I wake up, I spin that wheel every morning, right? And 30 days in a row, it might not land on 00. But that one day it lands on 00, that's a blank spot, right? So I can get myself in really big trouble by just relying on my willpower, my knowledge, frothy emotional appeal, just my thinking, right? Or rest on my laurels on what I did yesterday, because I'm just going to play the tape through. And that might work. Like I said, that might work for a long time, but then one day it's going to land on 00, and I'm going to wake up and get hit sideways by it. And I'm not going to be able to think through it because I'm obsessing, right? And so it's like my mind isn't whole. It's just missing that one little piece where you can look at it like a cake, or a pizza, like it's missing a slice. You know, eventually if you play Twister or whatever, you spin it enough times, eventually it's going to land on the empty spot. Yeah. And I'm not going to have the ability to think through it. That's why I think that stuff is dangerous when we tell people, just think through the drink. Like, it's like, yeah, it might work, but it might not.
Yeah.
And the day it doesn't, it's like playing Russian roulette.
Yeah.
You don't know when it's not going to work. You're going to wake up that day and use that same tool that has worked for you for a month straight, and then go to use it and it ain't going to work. Yeah. Because you're obsessing and you're screwed. You know, so that's why it's so important that we have to recover, right? So, but we can get sick again, right? So that's why, you know, it's so important to stay on top of this thing and to grow and to do our maintenance steps and, you know, work with others and keep doing the things and not rest on our laurels, because what happens if that lands on that blank spot? Am I in a good place spiritually on the day it lands on it? If so, I'm going to be okay. But if I'm not spiritually fit when it lands on that, and I don't care, maybe I've been sober for 18 years and it lands on that, you know, and I'm irritable and I'm already restless and discontent and a thought pops in my head. You know, that's what happens. Yeah. You know, so that's why we have to stay on guard and, you know, watch for stuff, you know, so, or else we'll end up drunk again. You know, it can be that simple.
Yeah.
You know, it's that dangerous. So, and your mind will tell you that you got this.
Oh yeah.
You know, like it will play tricks on you. Yeah. You know, so, you know, it'll tell you got this. It'll tell you, man, you've been sober for 10 years, man. You're good. No, you don't need to talk to that guy. You don't need to do that shit.
So I can think my last run. So like the way it started, right? When I relapsed the way it started was I ran into someone at the gas station that I hadn't seen, and I used to buy from him.
Mm-hmm.
So I already knew what he did, and it wasn't like he came to me and was instantly like, "Oh, I got this, hit me up." Like,
Right.
he knew I had been sober, but I was not spiritually fit, right? And that's what happened to me is I ran into him, had a very brief conversation, and that was the end of it. I went on my way, but that thought had happened, right? And
Yep.
I was in a
Been there.
right. That's it.
Yep.
And that's what it was. And then the next thing you know, I'm starting to obsess over, do I have his number?
Right.
You know, I could just call him one time, and then it turned into a mental obsession to where now I reached out through Facebook to get the number, and off I was.
So you just gave a good description of the order of operations of how this thing works, of how relapse occurs. I'm spiritually sick. It's where it starts, right? Starts with the spiritual malady. It starts there.
Yep.
I'm uncomfortable, right? Or I'm irritable, or I've got a resentment, or I'm full of fear, whatever it is, right? I've got this internal thing going on, and then something happens. By chance, you run into somebody. Then the mental, so the spiritual leads to the mental. Then the mental kicks in. And now I'm obsessing. And then eventually I act on that thought and I put one in me. Then now the physical takes over. The craving starts. And then I wake up the next day full of guilt, shame, remorse. Why'd I do that, man? Like, I know better. Why'd I do that? I'm such a loser. Like, why can't I get this right? The next thing you know, the thought starts again because I wake up spiritually sick and disconnected. And next thing you know, I start thinking like, I don't like how I feel right now. I'm full of guilt and shame and remorse. And, you know, I just hate myself. I hate how I feel. Man, you know, it would fix this, man, if I just got high again. Like, cause I didn't feel like this after I got high yesterday. Yeah. Then I get high again. And then I start the cycle all over again. And the body takes over again. And I'm off to the races. And it just keeps going and going. And you just can't, I can't break the cycle. Yeah. You know, once it starts, it's so hard to get it to stop. Once it, you know, outside of divine help, you know, outside of recovery, because I had so much, I had a lot of knowledge about, I can't do this. This is bad. Every time I do this, something bad happens. Like I had this knowledge, and I had willpower in every other aspect of my life. And also had a lot of frothy emotional appeal. Brian, please stop. You know, please don't do this anymore. My wife, you know, or my kids or my parents crying over it, you know, and I'm playing those things through my head, and I still did it because that's not strong enough to outlast that obsession. It wins every time. Every time. Yeah. And it talks about, like, we have that peculiar mental twist. That's that mental blank spot of where I will do these mental gymnastics in my head of somehow, some way to justify why it's okay to put one in me. Right. And that's why I don't agree with the fact that, like, we have a choice whether I'm going to drink or not. I might on Tuesday. That might be sufficient, right? Yeah. But it gets dangerous when I just rely on, I'm just going to choose not to do this anymore. Because what happens is, if I have a choice and I don't have a disease, right? If it's a choice, you don't choose whether or not you have cancer, right? Like, this affects my mind. And if I get spiritually sick, I lose that choice. You know, I have all kinds of choices, but I don't have a choice whether I drink or not. So what I have a choice to do is to stay spiritually fit. And if I stay spiritually fit, then there's not a choice to be made. I don't need to make a choice because I recoil from it, like we were talking about earlier, right? I don't need to make a choice. Like, there is no choice. Like, fuck that. Right. You know, like, that's poison. I'm not even considering it. But if I get spiritually sick, choice goes out the window. Yeah. You know, so I think you're up.
Me?
Yeah.
Let's see.
I'm all jacked up on some C4 right now.
Ego.
Ugh. one of the quickest things that lead people back to relapse.
Yeah.
Ego. You know, it will slowly, it's not always slowly, right? It will rebuild itself. Like it has this uncanny ability to, you know, you go into a treatment, you wash up into a treatment center and you're just beat all to shit, you know, and I will do anything. I will do. And I've done it and I've seen it, you know, being a patient in treatment or working there, see a guy come in there and be like, man, can I borrow your big book? I want to read the big book. You know, I want to do these steps, or I just can't wait to, you know, get started. And then like a week later, like, dude, it's time to go to group. Man, I ain't going to group, you know, or it's like, this is stupid. Why are we doing this? Like, it's just like, it rebuilds so quick, you know, like I'd rather spend time talking to this girl in here. Bro, you're married. Like, yeah, but she was sent here for me. You know, it's just like this ego builds like super quick, like to where they think that, or we think that I'm okay now. Right? Like, I'm okay. I was making a big deal out of this. Like, I'm okay. I've got this. Mm-hmm. I know what I need to do. I know what I need to do. Like, I don't need to do this anymore. Like, you know, I got it all figured out. You know, I appreciate your help, you know, and everything, but I don't need it, you know, because I've learned enough. You know, I've been here for 6 days. You know, I know all there is to know. You know, it's just amazing to me, like how quick that can rebuild. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it's like, I don't need you anymore. Mm-hmm. I don't need my sponsor, or I don't need God, or I don't need the steps, or I don't need fellowship. I don't need any of this shit because I'm good. You know, I feel good, you know, and so what are you talking about?
Yeah. So I can think back to a situation. So I'm trying not to like just repeat the same things, right? So I'm just kind of giving examples from me and my personal experience. I can think back to, I've had different points of sobriety. And at one point I had relapsed and I went to Florida for treatment, right? And this is how my ego was. I'm in inpatient residential treatment in Florida, and here I am running a big book study because I've been sober before and I've had some time. Let me teach you guys how to do this. And that was my ego, like, none of you guys have ever been involved in AA. None of you guys have ever done this. I got this. Let me teach this group of men.
Let me take you under my wing.
There and I look back and I'm like, it was all ego driven.
Yeah.
It's like, let me show you. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, and that was like a private group we had. There was no techs or counselors involved. It was just the client.
We did the same thing at Landmark.
Just men clients, right? Mm-hmm. And my ego was just like, I'm going to run this thing. Mm-hmm. I'm going to show them how this is. So, like, that's why I always say to people, I'm like, I don't know shit.
Right.
You know, yes, maybe I know some things, but I don't got this thing.
Yeah.
You know, I don't. And that's always one that I thought was so funny. And I thought back and I was like, man, I was like 10 days sober. You know what I mean? Acting like I was just, and then, you know, and then doing that, I remember even going into a group one day and the therapist, he had been sober at that time for, he had probably somewhere around 15, 20 years. This guy had been sober. And he come in and he slipped up, and I don't remember what it was, but it was, we were going over like
spiritual fact checking.
We were going over like spiritual principles or something.
Right.
And he was like, the spiritual principle of this step is this.
As a matter of fact.
And I was like, no, it's not. And he's like, yeah, it is. And I'm like, no. And he's like, why do you say that? And I'm like, because it says it right here. You know what I mean? But why? What was the point? That was my ego.
Yeah.
Like, just let me show you what I know.
Yeah.
You know, and I think back to those things. I'm like, what a fucking little punk. Like, what an idiot.
I think, you know, like when it comes to our egos, like it's so much like I'm so concerned about how you perceive me. Mm-hmm. I need you to know how much I know. Or I need you to know that I'm not as sick as you think I am. Mm-hmm. Or, I'm a better employee than what you think. Like it affects our whole life. It's not just recovery. Like I need that ego stroked, like I need you to know. You just need to know. You don't know who the fuck you're talking to. Okay? Like, no. Well, let me school you on something real quick. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, so I don't think there's anything wrong with like what you said necessarily of like we're having a big book study and treatment. I think that's good.
No,
but why?
But my intentions,
right? Yeah,
why
that's the problem.
It was to boost me and make me feel some type of way. Like, look at me.
Yeah,
that's what it was about.
Exactly. Like that's the issue.
It wasn't about helping someone.
Yeah, exactly. Like my
motives were selfish.
Yes, like that's what it all comes down to. God, this ego is just. I mean, it still crops up today. Yep. Like, man, why am I doing this? Like, why do I care? But ego's tough. The acronym for that is easing God out, right? So it's like when I'm trying to run shit, it's based on my ego, and it just rebuilds so quickly. Like you can see it a lot of the times, especially in a treatment center. It's like, wow, dude, like that quick? Like, yeah, that was pretty quick. I had a guy at RAC one time. I'll never forget this dude. Like, he comes in, he's in detox. I do his intake, and we're kind of buddying up a little bit. I'm talking to him, and we go out in the common area, like, later on that night, and I've got my big book sitting there, and he was like, can I read your big book? They didn't have big books there then, or they were out of them, or I don't even remember, but he didn't have one. He was like, can I read your big book? And I was like, he was so excited about it. He just wanted to touch my big book. And I was like, yeah, man. I was like, here you go. Next day, comes out in the common area. I'm sitting there and just watching everybody. And I've got my book there. And he sits down and he takes his little bony finger and he pushes it off the table. And I was like, whoa, like, what was that? Like, what are you doing? And he was like, I don't need that book. He was like, I already know what I need to do. And I was like, it was that quick. Like the day before, he was so hell-bent on, I just need to get any information I can out of this book. And the next day, he's like, screw your book.
He figured out the cure.
Yeah, I was like, wow.
In his dream.
Yeah, I was like, wow. Like, that was quick. Like, it can happen that fast. Like, that's the window. Mm-hmm. It's like your ego comes back, man. You're off to the races, unless we get it reeled back in. So, how we doing on time?
15 more minutes or so. All right. 10 to 15 minutes.
Comparison.
So that can be tough, depending on, like, because I used to compare myself to other people in recovery.
Yeah, for sure.
I would look at certain people and be like, man, comparing my situation to theirs, my lifestyle to theirs, and what they've got that I don't have, and and like at the end of the day, none of that matters.
Right?
None of that matters.
It doesn't.
And so I used to do that, looking at the cars they drive and how much time they got, and just trying to compare everything. And then all it did was made me feel like I was less than. Mm-hmm. It made me feel like I wasn't doing this thing right, or what was I not doing, and that wasn't the case. Everybody's situation is different. Everybody's lifestyles are different. Just,
everyone's path is different.
Right. Some people are going to get things quicker than others. It doesn't mean that you're not on your path that you're supposed to be on at that time. And I had to figure that out and learn, like, okay, so, not everybody is going to get to certain destinations. It's not a race.
Right.
This is not a race against
others,
against our fellows in this program. Only thing we're all racing against is time, as far as I need to race to get away from. I need to race to recover as soon as possible. Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And before that window closes, that's my race.
Yeah.
And then God will take care of me.
Yeah. If the guy next to you gets there 2 years before you, good for him. Right. It's not. That's irrelevant.
Right.
So comparison is the thief of all joy. Right. Like Sean Nix told me that when I was in rehab. I think it was a men's group, and it was about comparison. And it's a Theodore Roosevelt quote, and it's like, I have it written in my big book. I was like, dude, like I've been doing that my whole life, been comparing myself to other people, and it steals all of my thunder, steals all of it, right? Because I might start the day off thinking, man, I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing pretty good. I've been sober 60 days or whatever the amount of time is. My life's starting to come back together. And then I see somebody else that has something that I don't. And I'm like, why don't I have that? And I start focusing on the things I don't have instead of the things that I do have. And it leads to a lack of gratitude is what happens when I start comparing myself to other people. I'll compare myself, not even just in recovery, just like, man, like that guy makes how much money a year? I'm over here making this much, and I'm a loser, or like I'm just constantly measuring myself up to other people for different things. It's like, oh man, that guy's got this, that guy's got that. And it's like, hey, he probably worked for it, like, okay, and that's what the saying is, right? If you want what we have, you got to do what we do, right? So if I see somebody that has something that I want, it's not about I'm not comparing myself to them. It's like, hey, how'd you get that? Now it's like, how'd you get that? Because I want to get that.
Yeah.
It's not, well, I'm just not, I must be doing something wrong, And Josh told me one time, he was like, man, you're right where you're supposed to be. Because I was doing this in early recovery. I was like, how come this guy's, already sponsoring people, or how come he's already doing this, or how come he already got promoted at work, and he's like, dude, that's his path, right? Like, you're right where you're supposed to be, right? So if you want to get somewhere else, though, you got to start doing certain things. And I was like, okay, like, so that made sense to me. It's like, all right, if I want to get what he has, I got to do what he does, but comparison can be very troublesome.
Yeah.
It leads to self-resentment. I'm not good enough. I must be doing something wrong. And I might be doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Right? And that's something I need to look at, but it's not something that I need to go into like morbid reflection over about how I'm not good enough.
Right.
That's emotionally unsober. That's what we were talking about earlier. It's like there's a constructive way to compare yourself of, looking at something and say, hey, I want that. Okay, I need to find out how he got it. That's okay. That's healthy. Yeah. But looking at it like, man, he must know somebody. That's why he got that job, or, whatever, the types of things that we do.
Right.
The types of excuses why we come up with why someone else has something that we don't.
Yeah.
It's all BS.
Yep. I guess we do one more.
Let's do one more.
All right.
End with a banger.
Rock bottom.
Whew. All right. Rock bottom. Is it necessary? I guess, because, the bottom, there's no real rock bottom. Mm-hmm. The rock bottom is when you finally surrender, when you finally have enough, right? Because you can always keep digging. Real rock bottom is death. That's the rock bottom, But I used to explain to guys in treatment that like addiction or alcoholism is like an elevator that only goes in one direction, right? It only goes down, right? But you can get off it at any point. Mm-hmm. When you've had enough, you can get off.
Yeah.
If you're willing to. You don't have to ride it all the way into the ground, before you decide to do something different, right? So we don't have to, what's the saying, we don't we don't have to be badly mangled. Some of us do,
Yeah.
but all of it, it's not like a prerequisite. Like you have to have all these bad things happen to you before you can get sober. You don't have to. You can get, like I said, you can get off at any point, because you can always pick that shovel back up and just keep digging the hole deeper and until you die. So for some of us, I think rock bottom, basically it is necessary, but there's so many different types of bottoms, and there's so many different, just the way that it looks to each person that, my bottom might not be as bad as your bottom, but it was enough for me to go, you know what, fuck this.
Yeah. I think that was, something I even mentioned last week was like, I've had so many different bottoms, right? I can look back and see the physical bottoms, the mental and emotional bottoms. And that was even something after relapsing that I used to do, comparison. I would compare my situation to others. Well, I at least didn't get to that point, but my bottom might not have been as deep as theirs at that time. Like you said, there's so many different bottoms, but like you had said, the ultimate bottom is death.
Yeah, that's a good point that you brought up about comparison, right? Because I used to do that. Like, well, I'm not using a needle, so I guess I'm not that bad.
That was my, I was an IV drug user years ago, and then when I got sober in 2011, and then when I did go back out and relapse, that was one of the things. Well, I'm not back to a needle. Things aren't that bad.
Right.
But the emotional side of things was way worse, way deeper than it was in previous years, so. Yeah.
All right. Cool. All right. Well, if you guys enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, comment. We'd love to hear from you. We've still got some in the hat. So we're going to get like 3 episodes out of this. So we appreciate everything that you guys do. Hopefully this episode or our podcast in general, something I was going to say earlier, like, we don't do this podcast to feed people. Like, some people might get fed by watching it, but we do it to make people hungry, not to feed them, right? So that we can challenge people's thoughts, how they think of things, and, whether they agree or disagree, maybe you walk away from it, thinking about something in an open-minded way. So we appreciate you guys. Thank you, and we will see you next week.
Love you guys.